In the heart of a bustling city, billionaire Alexander Reed was driving his sleek black Rolls-Royce through a dimly lit alleyway. The night was cold and rain drizzled from the sky. He was taking an unusual route home after a stressful meeting. As he slowed down to check his GPS, a faint noise caught his attention, a weak cry echoing from a nearby dumpster. Curiosity piqued, Alexander stepped out, umbrella in hand, and cautiously approached the dumpster. What he found would haunt him forever. Two small, frail twins, barely 2 years old, wrapped in filthy blankets, their faces pale and their bodies trembling from hunger and cold. One reached out a tiny hand as if begging silently. His heart clenched. This man who had conquered the business world, who rarely let emotions dictate his actions, suddenly felt a surge of protectiveness. Without a second thought, he wrapped the children in his coat and called his private physician. That moment, under the rainy glow of a street lamp, marked the beginning of a life neither the twins nor Alexander could have ever imagined. Alexander held the twins tightly as his personal doctor, Dr. Grace Ellman, arrived moments later in her white SUV. She was stunned by the sight, two severely malnourished babies, their tiny limbs limp and their eyes glassy from exhaustion. Without hesitation, she performed a quick assessment and administered fluids while Alexander watched, unusually shaken. As the doctor loaded them carefully into the back of her car, Alexander barked into his phone, "Prepare the guest wing, full medical support. I want a team ready when we arrive." His mansion had never been used for such a purpose, but tonight, the wealth it held would serve a greater cause. On the ride to the estate, Alexander sat beside the twins, his hand resting protectively on the smaller one's shoulder. His mind reeled with questions. Who were they? How had they ended up abandoned like trash? He didn't know yet, but he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to let them die. The grand gates of Alexander Reed's estate opened to welcome a convoy rarely seen in its history. His Rolls-Royce, followed closely by Dr. Ellman's SUV. Inside, the once cold and sterile guest wing had been transformed in mere hours. Nurses stood ready, warm cribs awaited, and medical equipment hummed quietly in the background. As the twins were wheeled inside on stretchers, Alexander walked alongside them, refusing to leave their side. He ordered fresh clothes, soft formula, and even demanded the nursery be decorated to feel more like a home and less like a hospital. Dr. Ellman worked swiftly with the team, stabilizing the children's vitals, inserting IVs, and warming their tiny bodies. Alexander watched through the glass, fists clenched. For the first time in his adult life, he felt powerless, but more than that, he felt responsible. As dawn broke through the high mansion windows, the billionaire who once lived only for profit was now sitting beside two toddlers fighting for their lives, and he was all in. After 24 tense hours, the twins' conditions finally stabilized. They slept peacefully in the cribs, their little bodies swaddled in soft blankets. Alexander stood by the window, staring at them. For the first time, he truly noticed their faces, almost identical, save for a tiny birthmark behind the right ear of one. He turned to Dr. Ellman, who sat reviewing test results. "Do we know their names?" he asked. She shook her head. "No. ID, no note. Just two hungry, abandoned children." Alexander stared at them again. His heart pulled in a way he didn't understand. Names. They deserved names. He gently whispered, "This one. She looks like Hope, and her sister, Faith." Hope and Faith. The names felt right, symbols of something fragile but alive. The billionaire who once lived in a world of numbers and boardrooms was now naming children he had just met. And somehow, it felt like destiny. With the twins now resting safely, Alexander's mind turned to the unanswered questions surrounding their past. Who were their parents? Why had no one come looking for them? He summoned his top investigator, Ethan Cole, to the mansion. Ethan, a sharp-eyed former detective, listened intently as Alexander explained how he had found the children. "Check every hospital record, missing persons report, shelter file. I want answers," I want to know who would abandon two babies like that." Ethan nodded. "I'll dig into surveillance footage from nearby streets. Someone had to leave them." "There." Alexander handed him the tattered blanket the twins had been wrapped in. "Start with this. It may be worthless, or it may lead us somewhere." As Ethan left, Alexander returned to the nursery, watching as little hope stirred in her sleep. He knew uncovering the past might be painful, but the girls deserved the truth, and he would not rest until he found it. Days passed, and the twins' recovery continued steadily. Each morning, Alexander adjusted his rigid schedule to include visits to the nursery. Once consumed by board meetings and mergers, he now found himself changing diapers and learning how to properly warm a bottle. He stood awkwardly at first, bottle in hand, watching as baby Faith looked up at him with trusting eyes. A small hand grasped his finger, and something inside him shifted. He fed her slowly, carefully, surprised by how natural it began to feel. The staff watched with quiet astonishment. The Alexander Reed they knew was always distant, commanding, untouchable. But now, he laughed when Hope splashed formula on his shirt, and stayed up late rocking her when she whimpered in the night. The billionaire hadn't just rescued two children. They were, unknowingly, beginning to rescue him too. Late one evening, after the twins had fallen asleep, Alexander sat alone in the nursery, watching their tiny chests rise and fall. The peaceful silence stirred something deep in his memory, a place he rarely dared to visit. He closed his eyes and was pulled back to his own childhood. He remembered the cold nights, the foster homes, the hunger, a time when no one came for him. His fists tightened around the armrest of the rocking chair. He had clawed his way to the top, believing that money and power would protect him from ever feeling that helpless again. But these girls, Hope and Faith, they reminded him of the boy he used to be, scared, alone, abandoned. Tears welled in his eyes, unbidden. He realized he wasn't just saving them. He was saving the part of himself that had never healed. The house, once silent and sterile, now echoed with new life. For the first time since their rescue, the twins were strong enough to sit up and play. The staff gathered around, smiling as Hope clumsily shook a rattle, and Faith crawled across the rug toward Alexander. He crouched down, uncertain at first, but Faith reached him and tugged playfully at his tie. A chuckle escaped him, and then it happened. Hope let out a soft, infectious giggle. Alexander froze. Then Faith joined in, and their laughter rang like bells through the marble halls. It was pure, it was real, and it shattered the last wall around Alexander's heart. He scooped both girls into his arms, laughing with them, his designer suit rumpled, his $1,000,000 watch forgotten. For the first time in decades, Alexander Reed felt truly alive. Just as Alexander was beginning to settle into his new life with Hope and Faith, an unexpected knock sounded at the front door. A well-dressed woman holding a leather briefcase stood waiting. Ms. Karen Doyle, a representative from Child Protective Services, CPS. "I'm here regarding the abandoned children you found," she announced firmly. Alexander led her into the study, where she explained the legal situation. "The girls must be entered into the system. We're grateful for your care, but protocol demands placement in a registered foster home until a full investigation is complete." Alexander's jaw tightened. "They're not going anywhere." Karen met his gaze calmly. "You're not legally their guardian. Yet, he called his lawyer immediately. Make it happen. I don't care what it takes. I'm not letting them be lost in the system like I once was." As Karen left, she glanced back at the twins in the nursery, safe, happy, and healthy. Her expression softened, but the process had begun. Alexander would have to fight to keep them. The following days were a whirlwind of paperwork, court dates, and interviews. Alexander's top lawyers worked tirelessly to secure custody of Hope and Faith. The judge's chambers were filled with a palpable tension as Alexander sat beside the twins' doctor, Dr. Ellman, who testified about their fragile health and urgent need for a stable home. Despite the bureaucracy, Alexander's sincerity shone through. He spoke of his own childhood, of the loneliness and fear that haunted him, and how he vowed to give these girls a future far better than his past. The judge, moved by the testimony and evidence, granted temporary custody to Alexander with a strict promise that the investigation would continue. Alexander left the courtroom exhausted but determined. The fight had only begun, but he would move heaven and earth to protect hope and faith. As the legal process slowly moved forward, Alexander began introducing hope and faith to the idea of family. He hired a warm, experienced nanny, Mrs. Lilly, who had years of experience caring for children with difficult pasts. The girls blossomed under her gentle care. She read stories, sang lullabies, and taught them how to smile without fear. Slowly, Alexander's cold mansion transformed into a warm home filled with laughter and hope. One evening, as the twins sat cuddled in Mrs. Lilly's lap, Alexander found himself watching them from the doorway, his heart swelling with something he hadn't known in years: love. For all his wealth and power, this was the greatest fortune he could ever hope to possess. Days turned into weeks, and Alexander found himself living a life he had never imagined. The cold, sterile mansion began to hum with a warmth it hadn't known before, filled with the laughter of hope and faith, the soft lullabies of Mrs. Lilly, and the quiet moments of tenderness that slowly stitched the wounds left by their past. At first, the twins were shy and cautious. Hope would cling to Mrs. Lilly's skirt, and Faith would bury her face in Alexander's chest whenever strangers approached. Their trauma was evident in every hesitant glance and sudden flinch. But Alexander, driven by a fierce determination, refused to give up. Every morning he carved out time to sit with the girls, reading stories of faraway places and heroic adventures, hoping to ignite their imaginations and fill their world with possibilities. He learned to make silly faces and funny voices, causing peals of giggles to bubble up from their tiny bodies. He discovered that despite their fragility, they were fighters, two sparks of life that refused to be extinguished. One afternoon, as Alexander rocked Faith gently in the nursery, he whispered softly, "You're safe now. You don't have to be afraid." Faith looked up, her eyes wide, searching his face for truth. Alexander smiled, the first genuine, unguarded smile he'd given in years. "I promise. I'll never leave you." Mrs. Lilly watched from the doorway, tears glistening in her eyes. This was more than just rescue. It was a rebirth of hope, trust, and love. But beyond the mansion's walls, the world was still watching. The legal process pressed on, and Alexander knew the fight for the twins' future was far from over. Yet in these quiet moments, a new family was being born, one built not on blood, but on unwavering devotion. Despite the newfound peace inside the mansion, shadows from the twins' mysterious past began to creep closer. One morning, Alexander received an unexpected call from Ethan Cole, his investigator. "Sir, I found something," Ethan said gravely. "A woman matching the description of someone near where you found the twins. She's been missing for weeks." Alexander's heart pounded. "Who is she?" "Her name is Maria Santos," Ethan replied. "Neighbors say she had twins but disappeared suddenly. There are rumors of financial troubles and a dangerous man involved." The news unsettled Alexander. He had hoped to shield hope and faith from any painful truths for a little longer. But the past wasn't done with them yet. Determined to protect the girls, Alexander met with Maria's closest contacts, uncovering a story of hardship and fear. Maria had been desperate, trying to escape an abusive relationship and provide a better life for her children. The twins' abandonment was a heartbreaking act of survival. That night, Alexander sat beside the twins as they slept, thinking about the sacrifices made by a mother he'd never met. He vowed silently that no matter what secrets surfaced, he would be their protector, now and forever. One quiet afternoon, as sunlight filtered softly through the tall windows of the mansion, a knock echoed at the front door. Alexander opened, it to find a woman standing nervously on the doorstep, Maria Santos, the twins' mother. Her eyes were weary but filled with a desperate hope. "I want to see my children," she said quietly. Alexander felt a swirl of emotions: anger, pity, confusion. He invited her inside but insisted on a private conversation first. Maria revealed a heartbreaking story of abuse, poverty, and fear. She had been forced to leave hope and faith, thinking it was the only way to keep them safe. Tears streamed down her face as she begged Alexander to understand. Alexander listened silently, torn between the promise he made to protect the twins and the raw truth of a mother's love. After a long pause, he finally said, "We will find a way to do what's best for Hope and Faith, but for now, they need stability and safety." Maria nodded, grateful yet broken. The arrival of the mother marked the beginning of a new, complex chapter, one where love, forgiveness, and trust would all be tested. Maria's arrival stirred a complex storm inside the mansion. Alexander arranged for supervised visits, allowing Maria to spend time with Hope and Faith under the watchful eyes of Mrs. Lilly and medical staff. The twins were cautious at first, reaching out tentatively to the woman who was their mother, though their eyes searched Alexander's face for reassurance. Maria's guilt was palpable, but her love undeniable. She read stories, sang lullabies, and held the twins close, trying to make up for lost time. Alexander observed silently, his heart conflicted but hopeful that healing was possible. One afternoon, as Maria sat rocking Faith, she looked up at Alexander and whispered, "Thank you for saving them and for giving me hope that I can be better." Alexander nodded, his usual guarded demeanor softening. "We'll find the best way forward, together." In that fragile moment, two broken families began to weave themselves into one, imperfect but bound by love and the promise of a new beginning. The weeks following Maria's arrival were delicate, like walking on thin ice. Hope and Faith were learning to navigate the confusing emotions of having two homes: the mansion where Alexander's love was steady, and the new presence of their mother, whose arms sometimes trembled with uncertainty. Alexander arranged family counseling sessions, bringing in a child psychologist to guide them all through the tangled feelings. Maria, Alexander, and the twins sat together in a softly lit room filled with toys and books. At first, Maria struggled to hold Hope's gaze, but slowly, the ice began to thaw. One afternoon, as they practiced drawing pictures of their family, Hope shyly handed Alexander a crayon sketch of 3 stick figures holding hands. Alexander's throat tightened. This simple drawing symbolized progress, the fragile beginnings of trust. Later, he whispered to Maria, "It won't be easy, but with time, love can heal even the deepest wounds." Maria nodded, tears shining. "Thank you for giving us that chance." Just as the fragile family began to take tentative steps forward, shadows from the outside world threatened to disrupt their peace. Alexander received an anonymous letter containing threats against Maria, warning her to stay away from the twins, or else. The once confident woman visibly recoiled, fear flickering in her eyes. Alexander's protective instincts surged. He immediately increased security around the mansion and arranged for discreet surveillance. Determined to uncover the source of the threats, Alexander tasked Ethan with tracking the sender. Meanwhile, he spent long nights comforting Maria and reassuring the twins, doing everything he could to shield them from the darkness creeping closer. Though the road ahead was uncertain and fraught with danger, Alexander's resolve only grew stronger. He would protect Hope and Faith no matter the cost. Alexander's investigator, Ethan, dug deep into the shadows. The threats weren't random. They led to a man named Victor, a dangerous figure from Maria's past. A man who had once controlled her with fear and violence. Victor had resurfaced, intent on reclaiming what he believed was his, using the twins as leverage to manipulate Maria, and indirectly, Alexander. Alexander's anger simmered beneath his calm exterior. He couldn't allow Victor's past to poison their future. With his team, he devised a plan to confront Victor, protect the twins, and sever the ties that bound Maria to her tormentor. Late one evening, Alexander stood guard outside the mansion, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him like never before. But this time, He was ready. The night was thick with tension. Alexander's security team had tracked Victor's movements for days, and tonight was the moment to end the threat once and for all. Victor arrived near the mansion under the cloak of darkness, his eyes cold and calculating. Alexander met him in the grand foyer, his presence commanding but calm. "You think you can use those children to control Maria and me?" Alexander's voice was low but fierce. Victor sneered. "They're my bloodline, whether you like it or not. You'll never keep them from me." But Alexander was prepared. With evidence of Victor's criminal past and witnesses ready, he had law enforcement waiting just beyond the gates. As the police officers moved in, Victor's face twisted in rage and defeat. For the first time, he was powerless. Later, Alexander sat with Maria and the twins in the quiet nursery. The threat finally lifted. The air was heavy with relief. Maria clung to her daughters, tears streaming, whispering thanks. Alexander smiled softly, knowing this was the turning point, the moment their fractured lives could truly begin to heal. With Victor finally behind bars, the atmosphere inside the mansion shifted from fear to hope. Maria, now safe and supported, began to rebuild her life alongside Alexander and the twins. Alexander dedicated himself to creating a nurturing environment, not just a home, but a family. The twins' laughter grew louder, their smiles brighter. Maria found strength in therapy and the support of the caring team around her. One sunny morning, Alexander held a small celebration, a symbolic new beginning. Balloons floated and the twins wore bright dresses, their eyes shining with joy. As Alexander looked around at the people who had become his new family, he realized wealth meant little without love. Hope and faith had transformed his life in ways money never could. This was just the start, a future filled with promise, healing, and endless love. Life slowly settled into a new rhythm, one filled with small victories and quiet moments of joy. Alexander found himself waking up every morning to the sound of hope and faith's laughter echoing through the mansion's halls. The twins were growing healthier and stronger with each passing day, their eyes bright with curiosity and wonder. Maria, too, was healing. Supported by therapy and Alexander's unwavering commitment, she began to regain confidence. She learned how to be a mother in a new way, one not shadowed by fear but illuminated by love and hope. Alexander watched the little family with pride. He took time off from his business to be present, attending playdates, helping with bedtime stories, and even learning to cook simple meals that made the twins giggle. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Alexander sat with Maria on the porch. The twins played nearby, chasing fireflies in the warm summer air. Maria squeezed his hand and whispered, "Thank you for giving us a chance." Alexander smiled, the weight of his past lightened by the promise of their future. "We're just getting started." The journey to healing wasn't always easy. Some days, hope and faith would retreat into silence, memories of hunger and fear lurking just beneath their smiles. But Alexander never faltered. He became their steadfast anchor in a stormy sea, always patient, always gentle. One crisp autumn morning, Alexander took the twins to a nearby park, a place bursting with the colors of falling leaves and the laughter of children. It was the twins' first outing outside the mansion in months. As Hope tentatively reached out to touch a bright orange leaf, Faith giggled and chased a fluttering butterfly. Their eyes sparkled with wonder and newfound freedom. Alexander's heart swelled with pride and hope. Later, as he sat on a bench watching them play, a soft voice beside him said, "They're healing because you believed in them." He turned to see Maria, standing with a small picnic basket. She smiled warmly, her eyes reflecting gratitude and renewed strength. "We're stronger together," Alexander replied, feeling the truth of those words deeply. The crisp air was filled with excitement as Alexander planned a special day out for Hope and Faith, a visit to the city's children's museum. He wanted to give them experiences they'd never had, moments to fill their hearts with wonder and joy. The twins' eyes widened at the vibrant exhibits, giant building blocks, colorful paintings, and interactive displays that invited their tiny hands to explore. Hope squealed with delight as she climbed into a mini spaceship, pretending to zoom through the stars, while Faith marveled at the bright fish swimming in the giant aquarium. Alexander watched them, his heart swelling with a tenderness he hadn't felt since he was a child himself. This was more than just an outing. It was a symbol of new possibilities, a chance to rewrite the story of their lives. Maria joined them, holding their hands as they wandered through the museum. The smiles on all their faces were genuine and free, proof that healing was not just possible but happening. As the day drew to a close, Alexander carried Faith in his arms and held Hope's hand tightly. The future was uncertain, but filled with hope, a promise to protect, nurture, and love no matter what came next. Back at the mansion, the days grew warmer with laughter and shared moments. Alexander found himself marveling at how the twins' personalities blossomed. Hope, curious and brave, always asking questions. Faith, gentle and thoughtful, with a quiet smile that melted his heart. One evening, after a day filled with play and learning, Alexander gathered Maria and the twins. In the grand living room, he had arranged a surprise, a cozy storytelling night complete with fairy lights, blankets, and warm cocoa. As Alexander animatedly told tales of faraway kingdoms and heroic adventures, Hope's eyes sparkled with wonder. Faith nestled close to Maria, listening intently. For the first time in a long while, the mansion felt like home. Not just a house, but a sanctuary built on love. Maria smiled at Alexander, a silent thank you passing between them. The bond between the four was no longer fragile. It was growing into something strong and unbreakable. This night was more than just stories. It was the weaving of their new family's soul. Just as the new family found their rhythm, unexpected challenges tested their fragile happiness. The twins began attending a local preschool, a step toward normalcy, but one that brought its own worries. Hope struggled to adjust. The noises, the crowds, even the other children's curiosity about her worn clothes made her retreat into silence. Faith, sensing her sister's discomfort, clung tighter to Maria during drop-off times. Alexander met with the school's principal and teachers, determined to create a safe, supportive environment. He arranged for additional resources, counselors, special attention during transitions, and small group activities tailored to ease the twins' anxiety. At home, Alexander and Maria worked tirelessly to reassure Hope and Faith. They read stories about bravery, practiced deep breaths, and celebrated small victories, like Hope's first smile at school. Though the road ahead was still long and winding, their resolve was stronger than ever. Together they would face every obstacle, because love was their greatest strength. Weeks passed and small miracles began to unfold. Hope's silence at preschool slowly gave way to shy smiles and whispered greetings. One afternoon, during art class, she proudly showed Alexander a colorful drawing of a family, stick figures holding hands under a bright sun. Maria wiped away tears of joy when Hope hugged her tightly after school, whispering, "I like it there." Faith blossomed too, her laughter ringing louder and her confidence growing. She made new friends, and her gentle nature won over teachers and classmates alike. Alexander watched these breakthroughs with a swelling heart, realizing the healing wasn't just for the twins, it was for all of them. In their cozy home, they celebrated these victories, knowing that with patience and love, they could overcome any obstacle together. As spring blossomed outside the mansion's grand windows inside, something extraordinary was blossoming too. The healing of old wounds. Maria found her voice again, joining Alexander in the twins' care with growing confidence. She attended parenting classes, eager to learn how to nurture hope and faith in ways she never had before. One afternoon, Alexander surprised them with a visit to a nearby animal shelter. The twins' eyes sparkled at the sight of playful puppies and gentle kittens. Hope tentatively reached out to pet a fluffy golden retriever, while Faith giggled as a tiny kitten nuzzled her hand. For a moment, their fears melted away, replaced by pure, unfiltered joy. Alexander watched Maria kneel beside the girls, stroking their hair and whispering promises of protection and love. That day marked another step toward wholeness, a reminder that sometimes healing comes in the simplest, most unexpected moments. Months had passed since the twins were rescued from the dumpster, yet the journey toward trust was ongoing, a delicate dance of patience and perseverance. Maria had begun to open her heart, but the scars of her past sometimes shadowed her love. One chilly evening after a long day, Maria sat quietly in the nursery with Faith resting against her chest, while Hope played with wooden blocks on the floor. Alexander watched from the doorway, sensing Maria's inner turmoil. Gathering his courage, he stepped inside and gently took Maria's hand. "You're not alone," he whispered. "We're a family now. We'll face this together." Maria's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "I'm scared I'll lose them again," she admitted. "But I want to try, to be the mother they deserve." Alexander pulled her into a warm embrace. "You are stronger than you know, and we'll heal, one step at a time." That night, the mansion held a quiet promise of renewed hope, of mended hearts, and of a family learning to trust again. Despite the peaceful moments that had settled over their lives, the past refused to stay buried. One rainy afternoon, as Alexander was reviewing business documents, Maria received an unexpected phone call, one that sent a chill down her spine. It was a voice she hadn't heard in years, Victor's. Though he was behind bars, his influence still stretched far, with loyalists who sought to unsettle Maria and the family she had come to love. Maria's hands trembled as she hung up, fear threatening to claw back into her heart. Alexander noticed immediately and pulled her close. "We won't let him win," he vowed, his voice steel beneath gentle reassurance. Determined to protect their fragile sanctuary, Alexander doubled the security, hired private investigators, and ensured that every corner of the mansion was monitored. Yet the real battle wasn't just against external threats. It was the fight within Maria's heart to reclaim her peace. Nightmares would visit, and memories tried to consume her. But Alexander stood unwavering, reminding her daily that love was their fortress, stronger than any shadow from the past. Together, they faced the storm, holding tight to the light they had found in each other and in the twins. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil inside the mansion. Rain pounded relentlessly against the windows, casting flickering shadows that danced across the walls. Maria sat curled on the couch, clutching Hope's worn blanket close, the ghosts of her past haunting her every thought. Alexander knelt beside her, his eyes steady and full of unwavering resolve. "You don't have to carry this alone anymore," he whispered. "Let me carry it with you." Slowly, Maria nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. In that fragile moment, the walls she had built around her heart began to crumble. That night, Alexander arranged for Maria to meet a counselor, a compassionate woman who specialized in trauma and healing. Their first session was quiet, hesitant, but it was the first step toward reclaiming peace. Meanwhile, the twins slept peacefully in their cribs, unaware of the battles waging around them. For their sake, Maria and Alexander vowed to fight harder, to build a sanctuary where love could overcome fear. As dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, hope finally pierced through the darkness. Together, they would find their Billionaire days turned into weeks, and slowly, a new rhythm emerged within the mansion's walls. Maria's sessions with the counselor began to bear fruit, bringing moments of clarity and strength. Alexander stood by her side as her unwavering support, sharing in both her struggles and triumphs. One bright afternoon, the family gathered in the sunlit garden. The twins chased butterflies among blooming flowers, their laughter filling the air with pure joy. Maria watched them with a softness that hadn't been there before, a mother's love rekindled and fiercely protective. Alexander approached, holding 2 small cups of lemonade. "To new beginnings," he toasted softly. Maria smiled, raising her glass. "To family," In that moment, surrounded by the beauty of life and love, they felt whole. The fractured pieces of their lives had slowly been sewn together with threads of trust, hope, and endless devotion. Though challenges still lingered, the family knew they faced the future united, as one. The mansion, once silent and cold, now thrummed with life and possibility. Maria found herself dreaming again, not just for her children, but for herself. Inspired by Alexander's unwavering faith in them all, she began exploring ways to give back to other children like hope and faith. One afternoon, in the warm glow of the study's golden light, Maria sketched plans for a foundation dedicated to rescuing and supporting abandoned children. Alexander watched her with pride, offering ideas and encouragement. The twins played nearby, their innocent laughter a constant reminder of why this mission mattered. Together, they envisioned a future where no child would face hunger or neglect. It was a dream born from pain, but fueled by love and determination. As they sealed the plans with a promise to each other, a renewed sense of purpose filled the room. Hope not just for their family, but for countless others. Alexander and Maria's vision quickly turned into action. With the foundation now officially established, they began organizing a grand charity gala to raise awareness and funds. The mansion was transformed into a vibrant venue, sparkling with lights and filled with influential guests eager to support the cause. Maria, once hesitant and withdrawn, now stood confidently at the podium, sharing the story of hope and faith, the twins who had changed their lives forever. Her voice trembled with emotion, but her message was clear. No child should ever suffer in silence. Alexander watched with admiration as Maria inspired the room, their family's pain transformed into a powerful force for good. That night, the Ichor Foundation raised enough money to open a shelter dedicated to abandoned and starving children. It was a beacon of hope, a promise that love and compassion could change lives. As the evening ended, Alexander took Maria's hand, their eyes meeting with gratitude and determination. Together, they would continue to fight for the forgotten. As the shelter opened its doors, Alexander, Maria, Hope, and Faith stood together, their hearts full. The place was warm and inviting, filled with toys, books, and the laughter of children who, like the twins, had once known hunger and fear. Maria knelt beside a shy little boy, offering a gentle smile. "You're safe here," she whispered, feeling the familiar ache of her own past soften with every hopeful face around her. Alexander oversaw the final preparations, his vision turning into reality, not just a building, but a home where healing could begin. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the family gathered for a quiet dinner. The mansion felt fuller now, not just with belongings, but with love and purpose. Hope and Faith sat between Alexander and Maria, their hands intertwined. "This is just the beginning," Alexander said softly. Maria nodded, eyes shining with determination. "Together, we'll change countless lives." The future was uncertain, but for the first time, it was theirs to shape, united, strong, and full of hope. Years had passed since that fateful night when Alexander found hope and faith in the dumpster. The twins, now radiant young girls, blossomed, the warmth of a family built on love and resilience. Alexander stood in the garden of the mansion, watching the twins run freely beneath a sky streaked with the golden hues of sunset. Their laughter rang clear, a melody of joy that had once seemed impossible. Maria joined him, her eyes reflecting pride and gratitude. "We've come so far," she whispered. Alexander nodded, his heart full. "And we'll keep going. For them. For every child who needs a second chance." Their foundation thrived, touching countless lives and transforming futures. But more importantly, their own lives had been forever changed. Hope and Faith, once starving and forgotten, were now shining stars, proof that even the darkest moments could give birth to hope and love. As night fell, the family gathered inside the mansion, a home no longer defined by wealth, but by the unbreakable bonds that connected them. In that moment, Alexander knew that finding the twins was not just a chance encounter. It was destiny, and together they would continue to change the world, one life at a time.